Dystopia warning, obviously, because the Tories haven't gone yet, have they? Welcome back to General Election Watch 2024. Day, I don't know, 5, 6. Feels like it's been going on for 75 years, doesn't it? But I'm here today, dressed like an extra from a Dexy's Midnight Runners video, to bring you some good news. I know, weird, isn't it? Just a little heads up, if you're not a Tory, you're going to love this. And if you are a Tory, please carry on watching, because your tears sustain me. I particularly like the little desperate comments that you leave underneath my videos. I read them and laugh. Snap elections, right? They're designed to be a surprise. Designed to surprise the opposition, but not usually the party that's calling them. But that's what's happened. Safe to say the beginning of the campaign for the Conservatives has been shocking. How I've laughed. Another phenomenon that occurs during an election, usually, note that, usually, is that the polls will tighten between the party of government and the opposition. Well, do you want to know what's happened this time? The polls have widened. Labour is now sitting on 47%. They've gained 3 percentage points. The Tories are sitting on 20%. They've lost 2 percentage points. The days the Tories have been seeding. Oh, there's an interesting poll that's going to come out. Yeah, it is interesting in the sense that it goes against every other election precedent, in the sense that the party calling the election has dropped whilst the opposition's points have increased. I mean, wow. And it's not just this. Labour, they're not just leading in the broader voting intention polling. They're leading in every single age group. Now, I've carefully analysed these polls, yeah. I've pored over every single pie chart, checked the data, and I've come to the conclusion that the Tories are fucked. Yeah. Now, I don't often share good news, so I don't know what to do with myself. So I thought I'd share with you another couple of things that have amused me over the last couple of days. Sunak, whose director of communications evidently hates him, did another speech the other day, didn't he? And for God knows what reason, he thought it was a good idea to have the people recording that event record the back of his head. He went full Naboo from the Mighty Boosh. He turned his back on the camera, and the worst possible thing you could see was the crowd, because they looked like they were there under duress. It's like people had turned up at their house that morning and said, right, okay, you go to this event, or your mum gets it, right? She gets it.
So we really have turned a corner, and I hope you can see that the plan is working.
You could tell that they didn't want to be lectured by a tiny public schoolboy, once again smashing the optics, glad to see the back of you, is just one phrase that springs to mind, isn't it? In other news, Ed Davey, surprisingly, to me, gave me one of my highlights of the election so far. We know what he's like, he always pulls those stunts, doesn't he? They're kind of like dad jokes. And it wasn't the bit where he fell off his paddleboard into Lake Windermere. No, it wasn't that bit. I mean, he needs to be careful doing that. He's taking his life in his hands, isn't he? He'll be shitting through the eye of a needle for a week. But no, the thing that made me laugh was Sky News covering it. They sent a reporter out into the water on a canoe, whilst Ed Davey knelt on his paddleboard and gave the speech as if he was wearing a suit at a lectern, as if it was completely normal. Here's a clip.
Well, we won 4 historic by-elections in Tory heartlands, exactly the places you're talking about. No one expects us to. Labour was good in the polls, and we basically defied the odds, and we won. And we won for several reasons. People loved our candidates.
Do you know my favourite bit about that? It's the fear in the eyes of the reporter as he struggles with his oar. Yeah. And how completely unaffected Davey is by it. It's a moment of comedy genius, and it also proves how we are ridiculous as a country. In other news, Rayner was cleared. Yeah. Tory MP James Daly and his client journalist mates at the Mail, including Dan Hodges, pictured, did their best to try and get Angela Rayner arrested over a insignificant tax matter that amounted to £1,500 from years ago. The police have dropped the case. I, for one, could not be more glad that this woman, not her, but this woman, Angela Rayner, is going to be our future Deputy Prime Minister, because she is a legend. Back to Sunak. He tried playing bowls the other day in an attempt to appeal to the grey vote. They've been trying to run attack ads like this. Guess who's back to raid your pensions? Well, the Tories have to pay significantly fewer pensions, don't they, since they killed off most of their voter demographic with COVID. Should have renamed themselves the Shipman Party. To say they're getting pretty desperate in their attempt to court the grey vote, though, is an understatement, yeah. Because a source at Number 10 has confirmed that in an attempt to prove his loyalty to older voters, Rishi Sunak's going to shag a nan live on the BBC. The Conservatives. They'll do anything to win, including your nan. Now, it's quite remarkable to me that despite having full control of the media narrative, despite every mad policy, why do I keep going to Theresa May? The country that I love. Despite every single mad policy being picked up as a national conversation, they're terrible at it. A particularly bleak video was circulating the other day of a couple on the way to a food bank talking about how they've wanted to vote Tory. Bear in mind, this will boil your piss.
Lee and Pippa, who both have ill health, say they struggle to get by. They stopped to talk with me on their way to the food bank.
That's where we're going now.
Because of the cost of living, it's gone through the roof.
You still think the Conservatives should sort of get back in?
They've helped us more than anybody.
Yes, they have. They stood by us.
With what they've got to play with, which isn't a lot, they've juggled it where it's tried to help the poorer rather than the richer.
I'd be so gutted. Honestly, I just want Conservative.
This is a prime example of why they don't teach poor kids about politics at school, isn't it? This is also what happens when the press act like a PR arm of the Conservative Party. When they platform posh boys and also those other extremists, you know, those teak-stained Farage and Tice, who hate poor people like that. They're disgusted by them. They just see them as skulls to step on en route to power and money that they do not deserve. On no level is it about public service with any of them. Tories, Reform, none of them. With the opposition, I would say that is different. People like that are just seen as useful idiots. And they're a prime example of why we need press reform. They have been conned. And it's also why it's so important, despite the polling, that we all vote tactically to keep them out, to get them out, to decimate them. Because I've told you before, the only other place in Europe that has first past the post as a voting system is Belarus, and they're an actual dictatorship, yeah. Now, I wasn't going to say much about Farage because he disgusts me and I'd probably get arrested or sued. But the one thing I will say is he's living proof that life isn't fair. Do you know how rare it is to survive a plane crash? How incredibly rare. He's an extremist. He should not be platformed by anybody. The islamophobia being thrown about is nauseating. Oh yeah, and I saw this report that apparently Sunak's talking to Johnson about the election. Why? Johnson only won because of Brexit. Unless the advice you're asking Johnson is how to procure a hasty abortion, or is this discharge normal, do I need antibiotics, there's probably not much point asking him, mate. Oh, and the private school moaners are still at it. 4.2 million kids living in poverty, and their priority is private schools that are closing because they can't manage their own books. It's sickening, indignant and entitled. Something I can't relate to, probably because I didn't go to private school. If they can't afford the fees, maybe they should cut down on their avocado use and their Netflix subscriptions. Do you want to know what has closed en masse though since 2010 and the Tories came to power? State schools, 380, 139 primary schools, 99 secondary schools, 39 special schools, and an assortment of others, the ones that haven't fallen down because of RAC. Tories aren't telling you that, are they? Anyway, that's all from me for now. I'll be back, because as long as the horrors persist, and so do I. Things literally can only get better. Stop the Tories.